So, okay, we get onto the main event, we get onto the big thing, and we will talk about new films. We will talk about new films, the films that are promised in the title of this episode, if you're listening to it audio-wise. We will get to talking about those, but first, we need to deal with the cat out of the bag that is Persuasion. So, yes, I have finished watching Persuasion. I finished watching it earlier today. And, okay, I have to say, I'm somebody who has not read the book Persuasion. So one of the things that held me up from watching this for a while was because I was like, a lot of what Sharon was talking about was Sharon was comparing the book and saying they've taken something that was great and made it rubbish. And that was a lot of the source of your ire, would you say, Sharon?
Absolutely. That was the principle. That was like, of my top 5 grudges against Persuasion, that was number 1 grudge.
And Sharon is not joking. She does have a list of grudges. She does have a list of grudges about this film, and so I hadn't read the book, and so I was thinking, well, if I haven't read the book, am I really going to get the thing? I'm going to get why this film is such a crime against humanity, and so I started watching it, and I don't think I have the full extent of how much of a crime this film is, but I did have notes that I just put down. First and foremost, I just went, the voiceover is ill-fitting, because they have this whole thing where obviously they keep breaking the fourth wall. I mean, you referred to it as the Fleabagification of Jane Austen, and where she keeps breaking the fourth wall, she keeps talking to the camera, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't work, and it carries on throughout the whole film, and it is grating, and it is so much, and it is overdone, and it set my teeth on edge. Like whenever there's this whole thing where they okay, in storytelling they say show, don't tell. This film is all tell. There is no point at which they go figure it out yourself. No, something happens, and she has to do an aside to the camera, or she has to do like a side eye to the camera, or she has to go, so, blah, 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 and start saying all this stuff and all this exposition. And they keep telling you things like, oh yeah, Anne is just such a great character, there's nobody like Anne. And the only evidence you have for Anne being all these things that that they mention is that they tell you. You never see her do anything. I was about an hour into this film, and I realized I didn't know anything. I did not know anything about any of these characters. I mean, the film ended, and quite frankly, at the end of the film, you know nothing about any of these characters that you did not know at the beginning. And I just realized that it was scene after scene after scene, and I was about an hour in when I had to take a break. And scene after scene and the scenes were pointless because the scenes didn't tell you anything. You actually thought at the end of that scene, what did that scene do? Nothing. Did I move along the story? No. Okay, now we're going to Bath. Why? Well, we're off to Lyme. No. And this, I think, is probably the biggest crime. As this would have worried me even if I didn't know it was a Jane Austen adaptation. But knowing that it's a Jane Austen adaptation, there is no wit whatsoever, and there is the dialogue is terrible. It isn't smart. There's no good observation. The people talk is just kind of like meh, and I mean, essentially, I think there were 3 lines. There were 3 lines that I thought, ooh, that's kind of clever. And I was like, that must have been taken directly from the book. And everything else was somebody else writing stuff, trying to think, oh, I bet I can modernize this. And it just doesn't work. The clothing, there's some clothes that they wear in this film that you could walk into an office building with now, and it wouldn't look out of place. and oh, good Lord. But although I would say... I'll say things that I liked. I liked the colors.
That's a short list.
Yeah, I like it. It is actually a short list. I liked the colors, and I thought that Dakota Johnson's accent was good. But I like the colors, but it felt like somebody had watched the personal history of David Copperfield, copied some of the ideas as to like decor and stuff like that from that. But apart from that, it was just kind of like, and I watched a lot of this, and the film is slow. It is so slow. I'll tell you how slow it is. I watched a lot of this film on Netflix on an iPad on 1.5 times speed. And and I didn't feel like I was missing anything. I didn't feel, the only time when I watched it at 1.5, because just when you watch it 1.5 times speed, you kind of go, oh, people look like they're moving around weird or anything. There was one scene where somebody finished playing the piano and they get up and starts clapping, and the clapping looked a bit quick, and that was about it. The rest of the film, I was like, okay, yeah, cool. And I was like, wait, I watched this at 1.5 times speed. Why am I not noticing? the original film must be so slow paced. It must be so slow paced. But that is, yeah, Shaun, you go.
Are you sure? Yeah, you sure? You summed it up pretty convincingly there. Okay, I had to do this. I had to do this in 2 sittings. I had to do this. I got to the beach scene. I got to the beach. First of all, right,
that's where I stopped as well. Right. That's where I stopped as well.
So this is how it went. So I started to watch it, and I thought, well, it's interesting. I'll give this a bit of a chance, see where it's going to go, because I like the old dad and all that. And I thought, this might be
Richard E. Grant,
BBC-ish, like nothing like BBC Pride and Prejudice. And as I say, I don't know the book. I've never read the book or whatever, so I don't know. And I thought, this is quite interesting. And then it just seemed to get on my nerves a little bit. And I thought, this is right. And the bloke, when they get to that beach scene, what a wimp. I want to be friends, And it's like, ugh. And I think that's when I texted everybody and said, I'm trying to watch this, Sharon, but it's just not, it's just I'm going to have to take a break because...
And in some ways, the beach scene is not that offensive to me because it's not in the book at all. It's completely made up.
Right,
that whole scene is a complete...
So you don't mind?
Yeah, so that bit, I always think is probably the least offensive because it's a complete fabrication.
Okay,
the bloke comes across like a real wimp.
No,
and I thought, how could you like someone like that? No.
I think now, Sharon, so it's funny that you say that because I find that with that beach scene probably one of the most offensive.
Yeah.
And part of that is because, and I think because obviously you said it's not based in the book whatsoever.
It's funny dialogue, we
both stopped at that scene. We just went, sorry, need a break. And I think the dialogue in that scene is risible.
It's dire.
It's
bad. Absolutely.
It's bad.
It is so bad.
And the fact, and then they try and sort of like do it by her looking at the camera, and then I think it ends up with going, oh, now we're worse than like ex-lovers. We're friends, and I'm just kind of like,
oh yeah, no, like
you didn't need to say that. It felt like tweet speak. It felt like it was
all the way through.
And I know, but then is that there's this mix where there's some bits where they go into stuff that I think is Austen, and there's bits where they go into stuff that is more modern, and the mix doesn't work. It just does not work. It's the kind of film where you can almost see what they were trying to do, but they fail. they fail in doing it like badly. Sorry, Shaun, I interrupted you from.
No, it's cool. As you carry on, I've pretty much said it all anyway. But yeah, so I stopped at that scene and I was like, well, I've got to see the rest. I have to see the rest because I gave my word. I've got to struggle and see the rest. But yeah, the whole thing was a real struggle. And you're exactly right. You know nothing more about these characters. It's all superficial. A nice bit of scenery, but on the whole, I have to say that it was a sort of nothing awful. Didn't seem to have anything to it, at all.
Yeah, it was a real case of finishing and going, oh my God, that's an hour 45 minutes I'm not getting back.
I actually can't remember most of it.
You can't remember. That's the point.
Completely, yeah.
In my mind, the only bit that I remember is the bottle of wine at the start, and the never rabbit. And I'm still sure that the rabbits are a double entendre.
I think, yeah, but I think Richard E. Grant is he's the best thing.
Well, that is like Richard E. Grant because one of my notes just says Richard E. Grant, and I can't decide whether that was a good or a bad thing.
It was a good. I think he was. He was kind
of like on Withnail form.
Yeah, he was.
He probably understood the character of. I'm trying to think. It's Sir William, isn't it?
Yeah, he's just sort of like totally up himself. Totally up.
Kellynch Hall, yeah. So I think he probably understands that character the best. Whereas the others are it's just awful. I mean, I will never forgive them for making Anne Elliot wee behind a tree.
Oh, that was.
I will never forgive them.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Now, I'll tell you this film felt like because I remember I have directed Shakespeare adaptations before, like done Shakespeare on play on stage before. And when you're doing Shakespeare, well, with me anyway, I'm always trying to figure out a way of making this stuff make sense to people who are watching it who don't understand the language. So trying to figure out ways of staging it, of get people to do stuff or things that they can relate to, and some of them, I have to admit, were bad ideas. So I've watched them back and I've gone, that didn't work. And this film felt like they were going through the whole thing, thinking, okay, how can we update Jane Austen and make it more relatable to it? But it just felt like a whole bunch of first base ideas that did not actually serve the story. For me, the big problem is, well, as I said, the big thing is that, you finish the film, you've learned nothing new, but then nothing is shown that makes you understand why any of these people is desirable. This film is just filled with terrible characters, like her sister, who doesn't know where her kids are half the time, and at the beginning, essentially, I was watching this thing going, okay, there is nothing to this Anne Elliot person, and I find it so hard to believe, so hard to accept that Jane Austen would have written a character that would have been nothing.
Actually wallowing in self-pity. That's not Anne.
It's just so one note. It's so one note, and I think at that point we'll. But I want to finish this off.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say. I think Holly wanted to say something, and I rudely interrupted her earlier on about. She wanted to say something, and I just felt I sort of jumped in. So I don't know if you've got anything to say, Holly.
No, I don't have anything particularly profound because I say I don't really remember it. So
okay.
I feel like I'm the fortunate one here in this.
Don't worry. We probably, Shaun and I, we finished it now, and probably in about a week's time we'll be like, what do you mean Persuasion? I'll tell you what happened in a week's time. We'll be like, oh yeah, Persuasion. We should watch that, and
we should revisit. Yeah, we should revisit
we'll start watching it again because we forgot when we watched it. Okay, so but I like to finish off on a bit of the two lines that I was like, ooh. Those lines actually stood out, that I need to write those down. I need to note them. And one of them was when somebody talks about their cousin, and they talk about his relentless attack on your family. And they say like, oh, that must really, really put you off, Anne. And she says, actually, so far, that's his most willing quality. And I was like, that's actually a witty line. That's actually a witty line. I wasn't sure what it was from the book. And another bit where one of her sisters says, I'm never quite sure if you're insulting me or not, but I value your regard so little that I don't mind either way. And I thought, not in the book.
No, neither of those are book lines.
Okay, but those are the lines I actually thought, you know what? That's actually kind of witty. That's actually kind of, it's good. But apart from that, I don't think there was anything well observed in this film. And on that note, let's put Persuasion to bed. We've watched it now. Hope you're happy, Internet. Taiwo, hope you're happy.
Bury it, please.
And let's move forward to films that we've seen this week, which hopefully were better to us than Persuasion.